Welcome to the Pod Like a Girl podcast with your host, Mia Findlay. This podcast is all about exploring and celebrating women's stories, voices, and experiences through bold and unapologetic conversations. It is that time of year again when Married at First Sight Australia finds itself in the headlines for broadcasting highly concerning male behaviour, now violent male behaviour, without holding it accountable appropriately. This year, it would have been hard to miss, but there have been multiple headlines highlighting two of the grooms in particular, Paul and Adrian, for how they are choosing to interact with the partners they have been matched with by this show. There has been quite a lot of noise made about Adrian and past DV allegations from a former partner. There is a DVO which has been found, and it is a very, very concerning document, which we're not going to share in this episode. And he is exhibiting signs with the person he was matched with, Athena, which weekly is just highlighting why he should never have been allowed on this show. And then we have Paul, who chose to punch a hole in a door because his partner revealed that she had slept with somebody before him. What a shock. What a terrible thing for a woman to do. And I'm very happy to be joined today by Sarah Williams, CEO of What Were You Wearing, to talk all things MAFS, because I have such deep respect and admiration for Sarah. If you are living under a rock and you're not aware of Sarah, you will be aware of the rallies which were held last year in response to the escalating rates of male violence. We lost 101 women in Australia last year to male violence. Sarah actually gets things done. We do a lot of talking in this space, but Sarah does both. She talks about it, raises awareness, and then she gets things done. And in response to what is being broadcast on this show, What Were You Wearing have posted a petition which, as of my last time checking it, I believe has surpassed 11,000 signatures. So we must keep talking about this. We must keep holding these shows accountable. Otherwise, nothing is going to change. And we learn these behaviors somewhere. We normalize these behaviors somewhere. And there is no one thing which normalizes these behaviors, but certainly a show which is consumed by so many people, it's one of the most popular shows in Australia, is one of those pieces. These producers, Endemol Shine, they have an obligation not only to their participants, but also to their viewers, particularly to not just the young women who are seeing this and having this behavior normalized, but the young men who we are trying to steer in a different direction to where so many Australian men have ended up in cycles of behavior which are killing women and terrorizing them and making life a nightmare. So I'm so happy to be joined by Sarah. It's a fantastic chat. She reveals some things that she's learned from current and past participants, which just had my jaw on the floor. You'll see my expression throughout this podcast. She shocked me in an area where it is very hard to shock me. So I hope you enjoyed the episode. The petition link is in my description boxes all across wherever you are listening to this or watching it. Please also go and support Sarah and her incredible team. All those links will be in the description box below. Sarah is one of our most obvious and dedicated leaders. Sarah puts everything on the line, and we are so incredibly fortunate to have her with us today. So Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today. I am so excited to talk to you. Obviously, we connected last year during the incredible rallies you organised with your unbelievable organisation, of which I'm a big fangirl, What Were You Wearing? And we're here to talk about all things MAFS, but before we do, can you just give our audience a bit of background about who you are and the incredible work you do?
Yeah, no, thanks, Mia, for having me on. So I'm the founder and CEO of What Were You Wearing Australia, which is a not-for-profit organisation fighting to end sexual violence. Obviously, that intersects with domestic family violence as well and women's rights, but we do a range of different things. Our main two services is survivor healing groups. So they're healing groups in different locations around the country where it's free, always will be free, because we believe survivors have a right to free support, but they're run by mental health professionals. And the idea of the group is that you learn a different healing method each month, but you also get that power of group connection. So you get to meet other people, you get to realize that what happened to you, unfortunately, has happened to other people, that you're not alone, whilst also being supported by a professional and also learning different healing techniques.
Mhm.
Yeah, so at the moment we've obviously got those in like Perth, Brizzy, Melbourne, Sydney. You know, the overall goal is to have them in every state and city across the country. And then our second service is festival safe spaces. So there's such a big issue that's not spoken about is sexual assault, groping, and harassment in music festivals. And we actually are sort of like a first responder service in these festivals. So if someone is sexually assaulted, one of our trained staff will support them, or will attend the police with them, or medics, just ensuring that all their rights are met, but also that they have support afterwards so that they can be referred to services locally, and they're not just sort of like put back into the festival. And then we also work closely with the festival as well on the prevention side of actually preventing this from happening. So yeah, those are our two really awesome services that we do. And then, as most people know, we do a lot of advocacy and education. So, you know, I never in a million years would have expected, honestly, what we were going to be anything but, let alone have more than, 100 followers back in the day. But now we have the privilege of having an audience. And in my opinion, I've always been like, if you have the privilege of an audience, you need to use that to create awareness and education. And so, yeah, we call out the bullshit when it happens and bring awareness to all the millions of different things that happen. And unfortunately, it's quite a lot of the time, it's not great stuff. But, through that, we're able to actually start these conversations which are needed. And yeah, I guess that's a little bit of where we're at. I'm only 24, recently 24 myself. So I'm still a little one. So um, the biggest thing for me along the journey, and even like into now, is always consulting and speaking with other professionals. And anything and everything we do at What We're Wearing is done by, trauma informed psychologists or counselors. And it's being able to take my passion and drive and, like, I guess, fierce nature, but pairing it with the people with the expertise, and then making it happen.
It's incredible. I have, said this previously, but I think you are one of our most obvious leaders in the space. If you
Mm,
like, I think about what I was doing at 24 and I'm like, wasn't any of this. So if you've been able to achieve these monumentous things by this point, I have just so much encouragement in knowing that you're going to be one of our leaders in this space, but also take care of yourself because we need you.
mm,
You are a force to be reckoned
mm.
with, and I'm so grateful you're here with me today to talk about what I think I'm going to call the title of this episode, which is MAFS What the Fuck.
Love it.
What we're going to talk about today is not, the first instance of
Mm,
this show broadcasting concerning behavior at best, coercive
mm,
control, abuse, really, really, really concerning stuff that we're seeing, particularly from the male participants. And this season just seems to be all of it at once. So I would have
mm,
done a bit of an intro to give people some insight into what we're going to be talking about. There's two particular participants who we're going to focus on today, Paul and Adrienne. When you have seen what's unfolding with Paul and Karina and their dynamic, with him choosing to destroy property in response to her sharing that she had
mm.
slept with, I think it was a rapper, what were some of your thoughts and feelings as you've watched this cycle unfold?
Yeah, I remember on the Thursday, there was a video on TikTok just before it aired, and someone had got the information that that's what he did, that he punched a hole in the wall. And I thought, oh gosh, like surely there's no way. And I remember watching it, and it was extremely triggering, because from the victim survivor's perspective in me, you're reliving what you've been through and what you've experienced. For example, for me, I was just thinking and reading even the comments that are quite victim blaming and questioning, you know, why they stayed, and even Karina's responses, and also all the comments of saying, oh, it was just a wall, it wasn't her. And to that, I always think, like, that's how it starts, and that's how it started for me as a victim. Like, when I was in a DV relationship in 2019, it started by name calling, and then it would progress to hitting objects, hitting walls. It was never me physically in the beginning, but it wasn't too long before it ended up actually then being me being hit. And then that's when it gets progressively worse. And as we know, you know, statistics of domestic family and sexual violence, we're at a time where domestic family and sexual violence is like through the roof. We're at the worst, like it's the worst it's ever been.
Mhm.
And yeah, it blows my mind that during a time like that, this was able to be filmed and then aired, and then even coming into this year with this, like with 101 women being killed by men's violence last year, that we were still able then to air something like that. I see some comments and it's like, oh, but it's in post production, it's already been filmed. Like, what do you expect them to do? And so I actually have, this is this is where I can come in, but I have a communications degree, and even if without that, you just know that it's not hard to re-edit something. You've already got all the film, you can
Or
re-edit it.
put some text on a screen.
Literally. We could have done better trigger warnings.
Yeah.
I know that they eventually did, like, some content warnings, but the trigger warnings could have been better. We could have put helplines on the screen, like, actually have 1-800 respect rather than here's some link that you can't even click on
Yeah.
to the health website. Like, what, we're gonna click through the TV and go, "Yep, let me get onto this website," when it's literally on the screen for, like, 3, 4 seconds anyways. What they could have done in my ideal situation would have been kicked him off the show,
Yes.
put a statement up on the Instagram. There is still yet to be anything on the MAFS Instagram talking about this behavior. Um, or they could have put a statement up during the episode that, we've actually decided to cut these bits out. And yes, then you could say, oh, but the rest of the episodes, yeah, you might still see them in the background or see them in the group settings, but people know that you're not going to see them in one on one. You're not going to see them at the commitment ceremony. You're not going to see that relationship progress because what he did was unacceptable.
What I have found so concerning, Sarah, especially in the responses, is that people are saying, as you said, he just hit a door. He just put a hot, he didn't hit her. And then when you put that up against the 101 women killed last year, this is precisely why we're getting to that endpoint in like the cycle of
Mm,
misogyny, right? And the cycle of violence is because at every step of the way we can justify. At every single step of the way we can make it her fault or not a problem or everyone's overreacting. And what really frustrates me about it is that I haven't just seen these comments from men, I've also seen them from women, which
mm,
is obviously a lot of internalized stuff as far as a lot of women have experienced this. And so they have to make it okay for them. So that has to be okay so that it's
mm,
okay for them too. So they don't need to reckon with what might have happened to them or what might be currently happening to them. But what is really, really frustrating is that by saying that doesn't matter, you are invalidating the lived experience of so many women who are putting their, as you do, putting themselves on the line to say, this is the cycle and it happened to me and it
mm,
started here and then it went here and then it ended up somewhere that you sometimes can never come back from, quite
mm.
literally, right? So the invalidation of the lived experience of survivors saying this is just one part of the abuse cycle is so disheartening, especially when we're seeing so many comments where people's like they are sort of prioritizing their entertainment over this epidemic that we're in.
We know that when someone chooses that they are going to leave, that is the most dangerous time for them. Can you also imagine, though, being on a reality TV show that's being filmed with other people around and your relationship is literally being, that's what it's being looked at, then also being like wanting to leave? There is no safe situation there, especially with how it's all set up now and the lack of support for participants that we've been able to see. And that's the other thing is like all the people that are victim blaming Athena saying, why didn't she leave? Why did she say stay? It takes, I think the statistic is like it takes someone up to 7 times before they leave.
Mhm.
And when they leave, that's the most dangerous time.
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, that's just like, I think it shows the lack of education from people
Mhm.
around Australia and how far we've also got to come in terms of educating people. And in a way, I remember I got asked a question the other day, and it was like, "Oh, but in a way, is this good that it's being aired?" And In a way, yeah, it is, because it's showing people who aren't like me and you,
Mhm.
who know these things already. It's showing these behaviors. It's even all the conversations that have come out. It's going to probably make people sit and question behaviors. It's also going to potentially have people who are sitting at home watching this go, that could be living in these relationships right now, maybe realize something's not right and seek support or try and escape.
Yes.
And for that, that's amazing. But I think the core issue here is how it was done, and how it was done was just appalling.
Absolutely, because if you're going, it's not to say that this shouldn't be shown, that we shouldn't
Mm,
see examples of, because if you think about in previous seasons with people like, oh God, I can't even remember their names because I've like literally tried to erase them from my memory. But, we've seen multiple instances with couples where there's clearly abusive
mm,
methodologies happening here, coercive control, gaslighting, etc. And every time I see it, I'm like, okay, when they get to the experts couch, they're going to sit down and they're going to grill him and they're going to point it out and they're going to use all the right terminology and they're going to call it what it is, and then they're going to hold him accountable. Like when they sat down with Paul and Karina, I was like, say violence, say domestic violence, say
mm,
intimidation, say like this is intimidation and control. None of them would actually give it the proper language. So as you
mm,
say, it's only powerful if you show the behavior and then you show the consequence. And the consequence can't be, we're going to put you back in an apartment together, unsupervised, and
mm,
just kind of check in on you. Like,
mm,
why are they even still in the same property? As you said, like, there are obvious measures which should have happened, not only just in how they
mm,
broadcast it, how they edited it. I mean, Sarah, come on. There are bloody Real Housewives seasons where an entire housewife gets cut out of the season and we never even know that she exists until she comes out to the
mm,
press later. They can cut around someone. It's all excuses and garbage. But it's also then the caretaking of the participants themselves, which sends the message of, as you say, it's victim blaming the person and saying she's responsible for, some percentage of what's happening to her. But then also, why didn't she leave? Well, you told her she
mhm,
was the problem, so why would she leave? Um, and then the pressure on somebody like Karina and even Athena to now defend this person's reputation, right? Because it
mm,
is being broadcast. That's a very common sort of experience of victims, is they're really concerned about the person being damaged and their
mm.
reputation, and they have to make it all okay. Times that by a million now that it's on television, and that shouldn't be her responsibility. It should have been taken out of her hands to say, we are saying this is unacceptable,
Yeah.
off the show.
Mm. Yeah, that's the biggest thing. Like, he should have been kicked off the show, and you can still give him support in the background and support for their relationship if they wanted to continue in the background.
Mhm.
But I guess by them keeping someone like Paul on Married at First Sight after him punching the hole in the wall, it's not only, irresponsible, it normalizes and enables men's violence.
Yeah.
And the biggest concern for me was that people at home, particularly young men and boys, will watch that and be like, "Oh, well, there was no repercussions for his actions.
Mm.
Then, well, I can really do whatever I want because if Paul can punch a hole in the wall and be allowed to stay on Australia's biggest national reality TV show, then like what's stopping me from doing whatever I want in private at home or
Yes.
anywhere?" It enables things like locker room chat, all these, even things like that you would potentially see as smaller than physically punching an object or someone. It enables all that because it's like if you're allowing that, then you're gonna allow, misogyny and objectification and rape culture and all that different stuff. And we've seen it. It's not just this season, obviously, it's other seasons, and we see it on reality TV all the time, how they just have a history of fostering toxic environments. The entertainment, yeah, it excuses and then platforms the abusive behavior, and in my opinion, once you do that, you do become complicit in the harm as well. I guess my biggest thing is that by allowing him to stay, it's sending a message that abusive behavior isn't a deal breaker,
Mhm.
and abusive behavior, whether it's emotional, physical, financial, sexual, um, should be a deal breaker, especially on reality TV, and it should not be seen as entertainment because you can still have entertainment and drama without platforming and enabling abusive behavior.
Yes. And I think that one of the biggest problems with how we talk about this and how people think about it is they put it into different silos, right? Where they're like, oh, like he yelled at her, that's over here. He punched a door, that's here. Oh, a woman was murdered, that's all the way down here. It's all part of the same spectrum. It all belongs
Mhm.
together. It's all linked to each other. It's like you can't have up without down. You can't have yin without yang. You can't have that endpoint without all of this happening beforehand, right? And what really frightens me, like I said, is like people trying to normalize it for themselves, us trying to normalize it for each other. Where I think to myself, if a girlfriend of mine called me and said, my partner just punched a hole in the door, my first reaction would be, get out of there. Come here, get out of there. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like it would be that obvious to me. And I think if that was the context people were thinking about it through, if it was someone they cared about, if it was somebody else, but so many of us are just, and men too, as you say, are looking for reasons for it to be okay and for it to
Yeah.
be her fault or not that serious. But this has to be treated seriously because the statistics tell us it is serious. This is just escalation towards a horrific endpoint that hopefully we can all agree we're trying to avoid.
It's behaviors like this that it's like, is the abuser testing the boundaries? So it's the name calling, it's the shutting you down, it's the making you feel really depressed and self-esteem. And it's once those boundaries have been broken and then it's sort of like enabled, it gets to progressively a little bit worse. And then eventually it gets to things like punching holes in walls, objects being broken, and that's also the other thing that really scared me was that Karina's response, is a response we see all the time and a response I've probably done myself. And the thing though is, because in a way she sort of accepted the behavior and then is in a way like apologizing and just trying to get the situation honestly to just go away, it's sort of he's tested the boundary and he's sort of succeeded. So
Yeah.
now what is he going to go do next? Because he's already achieved this level. He's ready for the next. And that's when the experts, like, the safety should have been stepped in straight away. There should have been conversations. A whole range of different things should have been done. And yeah, unfortunately, like they should have 100% have been kicked out.
Yes.
Paul should have been kicked out. You know, you could have done things like offered Karina to come back next season, or if she wants to stay with Paul, like offering support on the side. But and you know, potentially that did happen, but from conversations I've had with ex and current participants, the thing that's broken my heart the most is I've spoken to a few people who, in other seasons, they were platformed as like the most beautiful, healthy, happy relationships,
Oh,
and they weren't. And the fight and the toxic abusive behavior that they thought was going to be on the screen
mm,
wasn't aired. So
yeah.
obviously they had other people to fill those parts, and you know, some of the couples may have gave that perfect couple, that healthy relationship vibe. So they haven't showcased any of these concerning behaviors. And it's like, how does also someone then speak about those behaviors when the whole country has now just watched you look really healthy and happy? That's a whole nother thing.
Yes.
Is you already see victim blaming for relationships like Athena and Adrian, Paul and Karina. But what about the relationships that may not have been good, but were on the show as these healthy couples? I've spoken to a lot that have confirmed that they aren't given third party psychology throughout the show. Um, so they are given there is like someone they can speak to. However, this person goes back to the producers and like is linked with the producers. So it's not a third party external body. So the thing is, none of the participants want to talk to that person because they know it's going to get
Oh,
back to the producer. So my thing is like, you need to mandatory have third party psychologists paid by MAFS. That's just in my opinion, the bare minimum, because you've making millions, if not like billions of dollars,
mm,
off of these participants. And they need to be in weekly psychology as well during the filming.
mhm.
I know that they do a psych analysis in the beginning. So I did confirm that that is the case. But then it comes to question, like, how does someone like Adrian with um, AVO and TV
Yeah.
allegations get past?
Yes.
But that's when then things come in of, from their perspective, maybe MAFS, like, maybe these producers, this reaction is what they're wanting
Yeah,
because it's giving them more people to watch the show. It's giving, like, people who've never heard about MAFS and probably now speaking about it and gonna turn on the TV and just give it a go. And maybe low-key in a, like, psychotic way, this is what they're wanting,
yeah,
which is really cool because it's like, how we haven't had a response yet from any of the people that we've emailed. Like, not even like a, "Thanks, we'll get back to you."
yeah.
Um, and it's just like, yeah, it makes you think, like, is this low-key their way of, like, I don't know.
It's
It's
soulless.
psychotic.
It's
It's
soulless.
fucked.
And as you said, it's complicity. It's complicity.
Mm,
If something happens to somebody on this show, they are absolutely complicit because everyone says, like, well, you know what you're gonna get. Like, you go on a reality TV show these days, you know what you're gonna get. And yeah, that's true to some extent. You might get the villain edit, right? Like you might
mm.
get, the reality TV treatment that we see some people go through. I don't think anyone could go on a reality TV show without considering that. And they, from what I've heard, they get a very long list of like, these are all the ways that your life could be terrible after doing this show, right? What I can guarantee you is not on that list is we might match you up with somebody where there is a
Mm.
public record of him having a protection order against him by a former partner, which you and I have both seen, which I'm not going to be broadcasting because it is highly, highly triggering and very, very disturbing. It is very, very violent. This is information they must have had. They must have had this information about
Mm.
Adrian. I'm sure Afina didn't have on her list of warnings. By the way, we might link you up with somebody like this and then put you in a hotel room with them for weeks on end. I'm sure that's not one of the considerations before going on the show.
100%. I remember I watched, when it was back starting, and I originally heard about these allegations, but I just don't think they went as big as they are now. And
Yeah.
I heard about these allegations, back when it was starting, and I remember I watched, like, a radio podcast clip of someone that must work in MAFS say that they were aware of the allegations. Yeah, that's somewhere out there because I remember I watched that. You
Well,
know, the other
they must do
really,
a police check. I mean, I get a police
well,
check
yeah,
when I'm
yeah.
walking down the street. I mean, of course they would do a police check.
The other really sick thing though is they've paired Adrian with these that has these allegations with Karina, who's a single mum.
Yes.
Like,
Great
she
point.
has a really young kid at home. It comes to the point where it's like like, the whole time they have a duty of care to ensure that the participants are safe. But it's like there's entertainment, there's, like, dramatizing stuff, and then it's, like, pure sick behavior.
Yes.
Like, how are you pairing someone with allegations, whether people think it's true or not, whether it is true or not, there's allegations,
Yes.
pairing with a single mum with a young kid. This is what we are seeing on some ex and current participants' stories already, and the conversations I've had is saying that unfortunately they believe it's going to take one of the participants taking their own life
Yeah.
before something's actually done. And
Mm.
that's was the big driver behind me starting the petition was because hearing that and also just there was 2 sides. There was the hearing that and realizing that we see that happen in the UK with
Yes.
reality TV shows, and it should not take someone being that traumatized or experiencing these different abusive behaviors to then take their life before the show has enough pressure on it to then do something.
Mhm.
And then the other side is from my advocacy and organization perspective of how the hell are we platforming these behaviors and not having repercussions and actually properly calling it out on national television on Australia's biggest reality TV show? Like, this was being filmed last year. Last year, I would say, we had the massive No More rallies, which was on every news platform around the country.
Yep.
We had so many conversations in the media around domestic family and sexual violence.
Mhm.
How in a year like that was this being filmed and, like, being edited and then allowed to go to air?
That is such a
Um,
powerful point, Sarah. I didn't even think about it through that lens of the
mm,
context of when it was being filmed and
mm,
the kind of culture last year kind of shifting in large part because of the person I'm talking to. I mean, your extraordinary work kept this at the top of everybody's list and everybody's mind and awareness. And they were filming this while that was all happening. So the willful ignorance, like you said, like whenever something feels off to me, I always try to zoom back and go, okay, if this doesn't make sense, if 1 + 1 is equaling 4, then what is the real intention here? And as you say, it seems like just this exploitative, soulless attempt to rage bait us all, which, as you say, is so
Mm,
frustrating because we have to talk about it, but also they want us to talk about it. But if they won't manage it appropriately and respond appropriately, then we have to keep having these conversations. And one of the
mm,
byproducts might be that it's doing exactly what, they want
mm,
to achieve. Yeah. Um, but because they are having this response, as you say, I think that there are some great opportunities here to have the broader conversations about this kind of behavior and the warning signs, etc. And the fact that people are having this strong response is really, really encouraging. On the topic of Adrian,
mm.
because obviously there's been this violent sort of display of, abusive behavior, in my view. What are some of the really concerning things about Adrian's? Obviously, we know about sort of this
Mm.
report that's come out. We know about sort of some of the alleged past behavior. What's some of the stuff you're seeing that's sending up red flags for you?
Ever since he's been on the screens, like, you just I for me personally, like, always feel sick whenever I see him speak,
Mhm.
and, the way he's gone about the relationship. There was the lack of care for the relationship from the beginning, the lack of acknowledgement and care that she is a single mom and has a kid, and that you have been paired in the experiment, and really on a from the start, it's like, if that is a preference that you didn't want, then leave. Like,
Yeah.
just leave. We have seen a lot of belittling, passive aggressive comments, the gaslighting, just a lot of like, even at the commitment ceremony on that just happened, where Fina and Adrian both choose to stay after the whole family meeting situation. Um, he's sitting there and like, for a start, I was felt sick that the, experts were grilling her
Yes.
on why she likes him, and I get where they were sort of coming from, but, like, why are you grilling her?
Mm,
Um, a common response to trauma is, like, freezing and shutting down. It was really, really weird.
mm,
Um, but then eventually when she just like the 4th time she says something she likes about him, she then chooses to stay, he's got this, like, most narcissistic smile on his face. Is sort of like a, "Yeah, I told you I was good." Well, it even turns to all the other participants and goes, "Yeah, I told you," or something like that. Um, and then he sits there and we've just yeah, there's a whole lot of the different behavior. It's the behaviors also of him deciding to leave because he wasn't in the promo shoot, but then coming back to the hotel and expecting an apology from her.
mhm.
Um, Also expecting her to pack his bags.
Yeah.
Um, all these little things is emotional abuse.
Mhm.
He has been emotionally abusing her. We've seen it on the screens, and they're not calling it out. They're not doing anything about it. And then they put little parts in like last night's episode, which you probably didn't see, but last night's episode, um, 2 other couples are fighting, and one of the guys calls Jamie, like, swears and goes, like, says, like, "Shut the fuck up," or something, and then
Mm.
They pan to Adrian, and Adrian goes, "Oh, you can't swear at women." What?
Oh, thank you, White Knight.
Out of all the footage you have, why?
Yeah,
Why
yeah,
that? Why that?
and it's even the pivot
Why would
towards, like, Lauren is now becoming this villain because
mm,
just saying, maybe in not the nicest way, that she doesn't feel like she's compatible with her partner, and it's working. Like, I had a comment last night and a few of them saying, "Well, what are you gonna say about the woman?" And they chose
yeah,
the word bashing her partner for not being alpha enough, and I was like, "Is that really the word we're gonna use when a man literally just put a hole in a surface?" Like, these
mm,
things are not equivalent, and they're trying to, like, give Elliot a redemption arc,
yeah,
and you can tell, like, that is being cleverly edited to make his partner look like
mhm,
she's terrible. And I think you've hit the nail on the head where it's like, this is intentional. This I
mm,
am not buying that they're not seeing your emails, that they're not seeing all this content, that they're not seeing the headlines, that they're not seeing victim survivors talking about the impact of this and what it's and women are the main consumers of this show.
Mm,
It feels cruel. It feels
mm.
and it feels complicit and it feels cruel.
Yeah, I know that they are aware. So we did a post and it was like the 5, I guess you'd say, big dogs behind the show, the executive producer, the ones that make all the decisions, and we exposed obviously who they were and their names. It's not hard to find, you just do a Google search. And I know that they know about it. We've had someone reach out saying they are aware, and also one of them that produces the show's account was on public, and the second it went live 30 minutes later, his account turned to private. So they know. I think in their mind it's like, just ignore it, it'll all blow over, and then no one will remember it. And the sad thing is, this is what we see in this advocacy world around women's rights across the world, mainly in Australia, is we'll talk about it, we'll be angry, we'll call out, put pressure on for about, like, as in the community, for about like a week, 2 weeks, and then we're on to something else, and or it's died down. And that's the really sad thing, is that, like, we need a whole of a community response to something like this. Potentially though, with this though, like, and we've had nearly 10,000, potentially nearly, it's probably hit 10,000 signatures on this petition, which is really amazing. If they don't have it in their hearts to make the change and take on board, honestly, the labor that so many professionals did to create these demands, I think it would take, honestly, like a government push or government response with something like this. It's not as simple as last week's Marty Sheargold, the community pressure, and, they've had to step him down. I think it's honestly potentially that sick.
I want to talk about the petition because I've
Mm,
said this to you, I've said it about you. One of the things I love about you and your work is that you give us something practical every single time. Like, we can all talk about it until our heads fall off,
mm,
which mine feels like it might on the regular, but for the amount of bloody yapping I do. But you then actually give us a follow through. You give, and Sarah, even if those things meet the outcome you want them to or they don't, the fact that you give people that sense of relief of like, I can actually do something, is such a kindness and such a generous thing to do,
mm,
because this does feel so hopeless so often, right? Where it's like, you'll
mm,
know it's wrong, but what can we actually do? And as you always do, you quickly got on it and put together this incredibly detailed and thoughtful and fulsome list of demands about what you want to see come out of this and how you would like to see them respond. Can you just talk us through sort of the key points
mm,
there? Obviously, there's quite a few of them, but the ones that you think are the most salient, the most important.
mm,
Because here's the thing: is that our efforts are always collaborative, right? Yes, if you
mm.
can't behave appropriately, get it off the air. But here's what you could do. Like, here's some, as you say, more free labor from women. What are some of those key points that you'd like to see implemented?
Yeah, so we established these with, and consulted about 48 hours with, not only psychologists and mental health professionals, but also ex and like current participants on the show, a few of them, and then ex participants. That was important, but then also victim survivors. So all the different aspects came together to then form these. And that was my most important thing, was I didn't want to just me go and create them. I wanted to be able to have the backing of, honestly, a powerhouse community. So we have 11 demands, but some of them that I guess are the big ones is, number one being the zero tolerance policy for abuse. So there should be, it's, you go in workplaces having your policies, it's like zero tolerance. Why is that not a thing for the show? So it's any participant who exhibits violent, coercive, or abusive behavior, whether it's physical, emotional, psychological, financial, or otherwise, should be immediately removed from the show. And it should never be normalized or framed as entertainment. The other ones is education on healthy relationships. So the whole preface of the show is on relationships and forming that marriage. They should be educated on what a healthy relationship is. Another example is on Intimacy Week. It's a week where they do different, like, experimenting, different intimate type stuff. There was no consent education in those episodes.
That's so true.
Um, we could have had some really detailed consent educations from one of the couple or a few of the couples, explaining what a healthy relationship is, what not is. And they could have utilized that to then also educate the viewers. But obviously that, yeah, didn't happen.
That's a great.
Um,
The other thing that frustrated me was when the expert said, we're going to get you some help, Paul, to like learn how
Oh
to
my god.
de-escalate. And I was like, show it. That's what you should be showing. Like
Yeah.
this, if you're going to keep him on, which you shouldn't, but if you are, that's happening all around the country. Show it.
And show like, tell us what support. Are you
Yeah.
just saying it? Like, where is he getting the support from, and is it actual third party? Like, is it a men's behavior change program? Like, what actually is it?
Mm.
And then the other thing is, I remember when Karina, she did an interview recently, and she said he was not allowed to that one of the bans he had was he wasn't allowed alcohol for the rest of the season. And if you watch the last 2 episodes that have just aired, he's got they're all drinking alcohol at the pit, and he has, yes, it might be alcohol free before
Yeah.
we get to that,
Yeah.
but he's got an alcohol bottle in his hand and he is drinking it with the other guys. Now, hopefully it is alcohol free.
Right.
Either way, why, like, it made me think, are they using that? Is there more little rage bait type things in this show?
Yeah.
Is that one of them that potentially someone like me could have found, which I wasn't going to, take a video of and go, bruh, are you just lying now? And
Yeah.
then that would have started something up. Like, it made me, I actually was like going crazy. I was like, bro, like, I'm just gonna hope that it was alcohol free.
Yes.
Um, one of the other petition demands is responsible editing and storytelling. So the choices that the production choose should prioritize ethical media practices by refusing to sensationalize or give airtime to abusive behavior for the sake of ratings. And we've also seen like Jackie and Morena come out of the show. Well, Jackie's still in the show, but like they've made their ways of being able to speak out, saying that it's all edited wrong and things that, you know, the way like they haven't included really important parts. And I've also heard the exact same thing from people in other seasons and from
Mhm.
other seasons that were the public's most favorite couples. So
Yes.
people might be like, "Oh, but it's just Jackie and Morena. I'm not the biggest, like, I love them," but people are like, "Oh, I'm not the biggest fans of them." Okay, well, in other seasons, there was other couples who you probably were big fans of that had the exact same experiences.
Yes.
So there's that. 6 is access to individual therapy for participants.
Mhm.
So in my opinion, if you're doing a relationship type of show and you're forming that connection, you should be accessing individual therapy. It needs to be third party, paid by MAFS. It needs to be trauma informed, all that jazz. We need comprehensive background checks is number 7.
Yes.
So actually, and not allowing, so this is the big part, is if something comes up and there's allegations, whether it's you believe it's true or not, if there's an allegation, it needs to be looked into. And I would say most of the time, we shouldn't, it should just, they're not going to go ahead. I'm sure when there's like what 20 participants, we can find someone else that doesn't have allegations in the entire of Australia.
How bad is
Like,
the participant pool? And if it's that bad, why are we showing any of this? Like,
literally. So yeah, the comprehensive background checks. Also the other one is having a specialist in the domestic family sexual violence field come on board that's trauma informed and is qualified. They
Mhm.
should be there from before, like pre-production, filming, and also now post-production. And they should be involved in making decisions, even around things like if someone's allegations do comes up, that's who we should be going back to the community and actually like let's talk to the community. 9 is duty of care, so MAFS having a legal and ethical duty of care to protect both its participants and its audience from harm.
Mhm.
Um, and this is like a big statement, but it comes to the point where it's like domestic family and sexual violence is already at an all-time high, and shows like this is encouraging these behaviors. I guess those are the biggest ones. Yeah, at the moment.
And like I said, so comprehensive. The link to that petition is going to be everywhere: Spotify, Apple, YouTube. We obviously do the video versions and the audio versions, but regardless of where it is, that is going to be up so that people can go and sign it because, as you say, it requires a full community pushback. The power is in our hands, but only when we utilize it in numbers great
Mm.
enough to actually send the message. And like you said, we just saw that with Marty Sheargold. That's an outlier of a response, right? Like something actually happened. There was actually a consequence. As far as my sense of faith that we have eyes on this and that we have this community of advocates, yourself being one of our most powerful and incredible voices and you actually put
Mm.
it into action. I'm so grateful for you. I'm so grateful for your time today. I don't think this is the last time we're probably going to have a chat like this, because there's so many things I want to talk to you about, and just always so grateful for your unbelievable generosity in this space.
No, thanks, Mia. I appreciate it a lot. Thanks for having me on. And yeah, hopefully we'll see some change. But I appreciate you giving me a voice.
Unreal. Talk to you soon.